We weren't supposed to be there.
I was supposed to. See, we're the same. And I was supposed to.
You were supposed to.
You were supposed to.
You were supposed to be there. I have to. I'm supposed to.
You were supposed to.
You were supposed to.
I came here to do what I was supposed to.
You know you were supposed to. You know that you were supposed to.
All right, welcome back to Diabolical. This is my relaunched YouTube channel. Kicked this channel back off a couple days ago with an intro video that you guys can watch. I'll link to it below. It's also sort of pinned to the page, so you've probably already seen it. And if not, you can check it out, kind of get a sense of what this channel is going to be about. One of the things is TV reviews, and one of the shows I've been reviewing for a long time now is Fear the Walking Dead. Really, all the Walking Dead shows for almost a decade now have been in my review repertoire. So, anyways, Fear the Walking Dead. After season 3, when David Erickson left as showrunner, was taken over by new showrunners, Ian Goldberg and Andrew Chambliss, and they have basically ruined the show. Starting in the middle of season 4, really with the advent of the vultures. I would blame them for Nick's death, but Nick, actor Frank Delane, wanted off the show, so you can't really hold that against them. They killed him off. Then they killed Madison halfway through season 4. Though since we never saw a body, they've kind of left the door ajar for a Madison return now for almost 3 years. Or three show years, really closer on 4 years. So starting in season 4, everything really went downhill, and really went downhill with Madison's death, and then the villain in season 4B, which was Martha, who is this crazy lady who wanted to kill people and make them strong by turning them into zombies, as though zombies are stronger than real living people, which, I guess she's crazy, so she doesn't need it to make logical sense. But the show also sort of took a lot of huge logical leaps and bounds, and that 4B kind of started that process of really in 4A with the vultures, because the vultures had put the stadium where Madison's group was living under siege, but still let them go out to scavenge for supplies. Even though they spent all this time sending Charlie in to kill their crops and starve them out, they still let them go out to scavenge for supplies. And I'm really still puzzled why they made this creative choice, because it makes no sense. Anyways, Martha, she ended up poisoning the characters with antifreeze, and then they needed ethanol to counteract the poison. And they found an ethanol tanker. Wasn't that convenient? And then they couldn't get the ethanol out of it, and then they shot it with Al's massively overpowered SWAT van. And then instead of collecting the ethanol as it spilled out, they just watched it go into the dirt, and they ended up using beer, which has a very small amount of alcohol compared to straight ethanol or liquor. They used beer to cure them, and then they keep bringing back the beer in different seasons over and over again. I guess they really like beer. Who doesn't, right? Beer's great, but yeah. Anyways, the beer balloon. So in this episode, and I guess I mentioned coincidences earlier because that is a big part of the episode JD, the latest episode in Fear the Walking Dead 6th season. Earlier in this season, there was a JD who was killed, John Dory. The initials JD in this episode made me think, and especially knowing this was a June forward episode, that they were talking about June Dory. Of course, that would have made sense. June is a capable woman. She's a nurse. She's like a super nurse, practically a doctor, part psychologist, part sharpshooter. Now she wears John's hat, so she's like a cowboy, cowgirl, whatever. She's an every woman, and, so you kind of think JD, they're talking about June, but no, of course not. They're talking about John Dory, just not John Dory Jr., John Dory Sr. Now, up to this point, we kind of assumed that John Dory's father was dead. Probably because initially when John Dory was conceived as a character and all this time up until they came up with the idea of introducing the father, they probably thought of him as dead also. At a certain point, they decided, hey, what a cool idea, what a neat twist this would be for June to run into John's father in the middle of Texas years into the zombie apocalypse. Now, this is a man, of course, who John Dory, despite searching far and wide for June at one point, has never run into, right? It makes me think of the villain group, the Believers and Teddy, who John Dory's dad is actually looking for. These guys, have apparently been around for a long time, but we only just started seeing their little the end is the beginning graffiti recently. And, despite being this large group that's been involved in all this stuff, nobody knows anything about them or where they are, and they're all mysterious. It's like, this show is so ridiculous because everyone always runs into each other and finds each other, but no one can find, the oil fields. No one can find the Believers' hideout. People can get to each other in a flash, except for when it's inconvenient to the plot. And then we get, June being unable to come deliver Grace's baby. Morgan has to take Grace to June. And there's a whole conflict there in this new episode where Morgan's all pissed at June. But it's like, why did June not come to Grace? Like, what? Why? There was no explanation. There was no discussion of that. Morgan's just mad at her because really of a decision that the writers and showrunners made. Anyways, so the coincidence here is that John Dory never sees his dad for like 40 years. He hasn't seen him since he was like a little boy, right? Because I don't know. I assume John Dory is supposed to be in his mid to late 40s, I guess. So he hasn't seen his dad, who's also been living in Texas, for 40 years. His dad hasn't bothered to find him or seek him out, and yet like 2 episodes after John is killed by Dakota, June just randomly runs into him. So that's sort of ridiculous, right? That's a ludicrous, implausible coincidence. But this show, of course, doesn't care about ludicrous, impossible coincidences. Last week we spent the whole time in the dream sequence of Grace's, and then ended the episode with her full-term baby being born stillborn, even though, just like earlier, the episode prior, the baby was kicking. Typically, you'll know that the baby is going to be stillborn at that point because it will no longer be moving, and, the mother can feel that. Anyways, she meets John Dory Sr. She realizes him because she points her gun at him, and he says, "Where did you get that gun?" "That's my gun." And he says, "I'm John Dory." What? Oh, how surprising. Oh, shock. Or so. Oh, it's John Dory back from the dead as an old man. Coincidences don't stop there, of course. John Dory is looking for Teddy, who was the guy that he put away like 40 years ago in this big, ugly case where he framed him and stuff, but he knew he was a bad guy and he was doing the wrong thing for the right reasons. Hopefully he hooks up with Morgan and they let him do good to make up for the wrong stuff he's done in the past. So that is a big motivating thing on this show. But he put away Teddy, and this messed him up so bad that he then abandoned his wife and child because they'd be better off without him. We don't know why exactly. This is not really spoken other than he did something. It was just so bad, his framing this bad guy to put him in jail, that he had to, spare his son the life of living with a father in order to... Yeah, I don't know. It's just another of the gobbledygook nonsense reasoning that we get in Fear the Walking Dead. John Dory Sr. seems kind of like an asshole for sure. He's a curmudgeonly old bastard. At one point, while they're looking for Teddy, he locks June up in that convenience store that still has all the good food and stuff and videos and whatnot that John always would go to. He locks her up to protect her, basically. And then he goes off and gets himself almost killed, and then she's gotten out and saves him, of course, just in the nick of time, because I guess she knew where he'd be. So that's kind of the main thrust of this episode. It's John Dory Sr. appearing out of the mists just in time for his son to have been killed 2 episodes earlier. No tearful reunion. No grappling with that relationship. Like, if they were going to introduce it, you'd think they'd introduce it, earlier so that the 2 Dorys could have some sort of, story between them. There should be some sort of bonding or, like a reckoning, something. Anyways, the second story here is about Dwight and Sherry. Sherry's my favorite character. One cool thing she does is ride her horse so fast and so hard, trying to find June for some reason. Like, she's really just loves June so much that the horse dies, and then Dwight's about to say that they have to put it out of its misery. But he doesn't die. The horse collapses, I should say. His heart goes kaput. And as Dwight is saying this, Sherry just is like stone cold killer, shoots the horse dead because Sherry's such a badass. So Dwight and Sherry, he's like, dude, Sherry, what the hell, man? Like, what happened to you? What is wrong with you? You are crazy now and so unpleasant. And she's like, I have to go back to Virginia and kill the man responsible for all of this. Like, all of this? Negan is not responsible for all of this. Negan is responsible for the shit that happened in Virginia and a major player in the crappiness that were season 7 and 8 of The Walking Dead. But he is not responsible for any of the damn stuff going on in Texas or the state of affairs on Fear the Walking Dead. Negan would be a breath of fresh air on Fear the Walking Dead, except for, my God, can you even imagine how they would write him on this show? I mean, I could definitely see Negan becoming a Morganite and having to make up for all the shit he's done in the past. But he would just say it like Negan, like with that swagger and everything. It would be horrifying. Anyways, so Sherry wants to go back to Virginia to kill Negan because that's a new motivation for her. I mean, she's been gone for years. She's hanging out with these masked dudes, and she told Dwight that she didn't want to be with him because she could find herself with this other group. But now it turns out she wants to go to Virginia to kill Negan. Probably doesn't realize Maggie is already kind of on that whole vendetta thing. There's not really room for another Maggie in The Walking Dead. I'm not sure there's room for one Maggie. Anyways, but Dwight's like, John and June changed everything, Sherry. They made me realize that 2 people could be together still and happy and stuff. And Sherry's like, bitch, please. And Dwight's like, oh, but Sherry, I just love how fun and charming and beautiful you are. And then after stuff happens with John Dory Sr., Sherry's like, maybe we can make it work, Dwight. I'm not sure what's changed really, except for that the writers have written this script for me to say that something has changed. And they're like, oh, cool, let's make babies and make Grace's dream hallucination come true. And then June takes takes John Dory Sr. back to Morgantown, and Morgan is like, cool, thanks for bringing him. I love you again, June, and I'm not mad anymore. Really, we should blame the writers for these terrible scripts and not each other. Really, we should stick together and maybe even find better shows to be on instead of this one, because this one is it's just so bad. Anyways, so I give this episode like 2 out of 5 stars. 40%. That would be 4 out of 10. Because it could be a lot worse, but it could be a hell of a lot better. Let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I think that little bell thing, that if you click the bell thing down below, it's like that does something that helps me. So click the bell thing, ring it, and share this video if you enjoyed it. I'd like to keep making more of these, hopefully. And we'll have another one of these next week. I think we're getting pretty close to the end of the season. I think this was like episode, I'll have to check. I don't have it in front of me. But did I like anything about the episode? The guy who plays John Dory did a good job. And I need to look up his name. Hold on. All right, Keith Carradine. Or Carradine? I know I've seen him in some stuff. But yeah, he seems fine, I guess. I just feel like even good actors come here to die, right? Like, you know, like Lenny James is a great actor, but Morgan is insufferable. Except for when he's killing. He's a badass killer. You know, Garrett Dillahunt, phenomenal actor. I love him in just about everything he's done that I've seen. And he was actually really good in Fear the Walking Dead, but my God, they ruined his character, right? Like, it's such a waste. Alicia Dedmon Carey, just the list goes on and on. Frank Delane, who we mentioned earlier. I mean, they've been wasted. Especially Alicia has just been so underutilized and just. I mean, I know she's like in a big episode next week, and people think it's going to have to do with Madison, which I don't think so. But just wasted talent on this show, you know. And I forgot to mention, at the end of the episode, speaking of John Dory and June, she finally reads his letter. And it's this whole thing. It's just it's so perfectly timed to also have his dad there. Like he wrote it knowing that June would find his dad and then read the letter in front of him out loud while weeping. Because it's all about like, I'm so sorry I had to leave you, June. But because I love you so much, I had to go. And it's kind of like, I realized it's like my dad leaving me when I was a kid. He had to go, man. And like, I forgive him and stuff. And I hope you forgive me too. And I'll try to find you someday. It's just, you know, clearly they didn't write the letter until they came up with the idea that John Dory Sr. was coming back. Then they wrote it. And then they just tuned it perfectly for him to be standing there while she reads the letter, which of course was in her jacket that she lost that Dwight and Sherry found. So now Dwight and Sherry can be part of that moment, and Sherry can decide not to go back and not to kill Negan. Maybe live and let live for a while, and we'll all go to Morgantown where we'll all make a bunch of babies and live happily ever after. Just once we take out Teddy, who random dude at the cabin knew is going to kill everybody, and yeah. So, anyways, like, subscribe, ding a bell, follow me on my Substack where I will also be posting about this, or at Forbes where I will also be posting about this. Forbes, YouTube, Substack, one big happy family.